Walk down any street in your town and imagine how this place came to be. Who walked here before you? Think about all that has gone before, the fabric of our past, the mold for our present, and the design for our future. This year, Lexington and the Bluegrass will welcome the Alltech FEI 2010 World Equestrian Games. But long after the crowds have left, what will remain? We have all seen the preparations. There will be new roadways, a newfound sense of purpose, the knowledge that we have hosted the world. But is there more? The Bluegrass Community Foundation is leading the way, helping to bring legacy projects to our city. The John S. and James L. Knight Foundation funded the Legacy Initiative. The Legacy Initiative was a call to the community. What projects will benefit the community most in the long term after the World Equestrian Games? The community responded with 140 great ideas. After a series of public forums, 2 specific legacy projects were chosen because of their ability to create positive, sustainable community change. First, to help the community with the ongoing renaissance in Lexington's historic East End neighborhood. And secondly, the creation of a biking and walking trail from downtown to the Kentucky Horse Park.
I think for what those 2 things represented, and you'll hear a theme throughout this as far as I'm concerned, and that's connectivity and convergence. And I think those 2 things represent that. The East End part of the legacy represents an inclusiveness in projects. The trail represents connecting so many things from urban to rural, and I think there was a recognition of those things. I think the trail represents progressiveness. There's a representation of that in those 2 projects. And I think working in East End with all its rich equine history and all of its possibilities for retail and residential represents so much as well.
The amazing thing about that process is that everyone had the opportunity to speak their mind about what they wanted. And it was a very inclusive process. And as a result, those people who had the most passion about their projects were able to surface them. And the most passionate projects, the most passionate people said, we want the Legacy Trail, we want the East End revitalization. And so as a result, we have these wonderful projects that are working very closely together.
This project was not government-driven. Its design and creation came from the citizens, community-driven, more of a grassroots, bottom-up driven project than a top-down directive.
That's the great thing about the legacy projects, is that they were citizen-driven. The ideas that we're working on creating for the World Equestrian Games came from the people who live here in Lexington. And that's a new way of doing business for us, and it's going to be a great way to continue for our city to have the citizens themselves saying what they think is important and us acting on that.
Early on, engaged the residents of the community. We had a big kickoff event where the neighborhood just came out, and it was a picnic, a party, and the Bluegrass Community Foundation helped plan that. And it just turned out to be about 200, 250 people showed up. So what a way to start the planning process. It got them engaged early on.
When Lexington was going through a selection process as to what projects should rise to the top as critical for us to focus on, the Urban League submitted the 3rd Street corridor as a project of interest. And it did, in fact, end up being one of 2, 3rd Street corridor and the Legacy Trail. So, yes, absolutely. You're exactly right when you talk about it matching our mission.
There's a lot to be said for having citizens involved in their community. It generally will yield a better end result, a result that's just has a broader perspective. It has greater input from an assortment of people in the community. It often will result in greater buy-in by members of the community to whatever the project may be. And so for all those reasons, the more of these types of projects we can have, the better.
Both of the Legacy Project initiatives are connected. Each is only whole in relation to the other. Both must succeed. Both will succeed.
There is a convergence of several things in this. First, in the processes through which this was done. There was a convergence of citizenship and a convergence of processes, and there was a convergence of ideas that came out of that process. And the projects, to me, are symbolic of convergence of these natural resources. As far as I'm concerned, there's a spiritual element to this, as well as a professional element. And so you're connecting what's considered in town to what's considered, outside of town. And I think doing East End with this trail, it's a perfect symbol of that.
I can see why people would initially think that these two projects are not related. The most amazing thing is that they are very related, because the essence of Lexington is the combination of our wonderful downtown history, architecture, culture, and then also our farming and our agricultural tradition. And those two have always worked together. And so I think that this is just a symbol of those two cultures, those two things coming together into one big project.
Why, you may ask, is this inner city renovation important to the future of Lexington?
There's just some cold, hard economic reality to it. Our community is better off if we have that segment of 3rd Street being utilized to its maximum economic potential.
Because I really do see that this area it's all connected. You've got residents here that have kept the city going for so long. Blue-collar workers, people that work for the government, people that offer that entertainment and the cultural aspect of Lexington, whose roots are deep, deep here. And it's very important. One part of your body is only as healthy as another. You've got to take care of the whole self.
Look at where we are in relationship to downtown, to the universities, to all the amenities that any neighborhood would love to have, but we're right here. It's a very walkable community. You've already seen people riding bikes in this community. So it's a neighborhood, and it's a viable, active neighborhood.
For longtime residents of the area, change has been noticeable over the past few years. A change for the better.
When I first moved here in 1994, 15 years ago, I remember my co-workers chastising me because I was moving into a inner city neighborhood that most people was moving away from. People were fleeing to the suburbs, and I wanted to be downtown. And for a long time, I questioned whether it was a good move as well. You still had the housing project back here, and it gave the neighborhood a very, I think, bad reputation. And I think the most positive thing that's happened in the neighborhood in the last perhaps 5 or 6 years, and I think that's when the good things began to happen, was the destruction or the tearing down of the Bluegrass Aspendale housing project.
I'd say multi-millions of dollars, and upwards, I can count right now, probably $25 million of investment going on at this moment with road improvements, the new school, the William Wells Brown Elementary School, which is in the revitalized Bluegrass Aspendale area, the Lyric Theater, the gardens, people fixing up their homes because they see around the community that things are happening. And there's a sense of pride. Absolutely, I would recommend anybody riding through right now to check out what's going on. It's very energetic.